So happy that you could join and that audio and visual is working.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So welcome back, everyone, to my podcast. Welcome to Linda Love Talks Career Edition. My audience has always wanted more CEOs and CFO interviews. So as I promised, I have a CFO today, Mr. Scott E. Briggs. Who's also someone I used to call my big work brother, and he's taught me a few things which I probably will share on the show. And Scott, would you like to further introduce yourself?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. So like I said, my name is Scott Briggs. I'm the CFO for an engineering company called Engineering and Land Planning. We're in Clinton, New Jersey. Um, yeah, excited to be here and to answer some of the questions.
Yes, and probably for some of us who have known us, some of our colleagues, this is probably the most they'll ever hear from you. Because
Yeah.
you're usually very quiet, but once you get to know Scott, actually, he does fill in the conversation pretty well.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. So, question, what made you decide for this career?
I was looking at that question and I thought you started with the tough one.
Hmm.
Because I'm not sure what made me decide on it. I knew I understood construction and engineering, and in college I got into finance. Um, so it kind of worked itself out, kind of worked up the ladder in the accounting finance world. And that's where I am now. That's, so growing up, you don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't until I was in college when I figured I wanted to do accounting. And it wasn't until I started at Moore Trench, where we worked together,
Hmm.
where I knew I wanted to stay in the construction and engineering field. Because it's something I knew and it's something I enjoyed and understood.
Which is so fascinating. Did you ever think of yourself like when we knew each other, when we first met as coworkers at Moore Trench, did you ever feel that, did you think then that you would be where you are now?
No.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so when I started at Moore Trench, I started off as a staff accountant in their corporate department. Um, and within a few months, I moved over to they'll call it their private accounting department. We called it the cost group. Um, and that really opened me up to a whole world of learning and experience. Um, from visiting job sites to understanding, the true costs that go into a project. How do they bid a project? How they come up with that number, um, and putting together all the invoices that we did. We focused on a lot of the time material change order billing,
Hmm.
um, and we were detailed. Some of these invoices were 1 to 3 inches thick. The support.
Hmm.
Um, so it's not a minor task, but you know, the detail you put into one invoice, it kind of teaches you or you learn how to really focus and put detail into other aspects of your career. Um, so I was in that group until about 2011. Um, and I got an offer to work at a billion-dollar company in Morristown. They're a government contractor. Um, and there, I kind of worked with government auditors, I'm obviously on the other side of the table of them,
Hmm.
doing audits, um, creating their overhead rate,
Hmm.
so you have all your overhead costs, to manage the day-to-day operations of the company. Um, but the government asks you to build that into these contracts.
Hmm.
And so you kind of get paid for them.
Yeah.
Um, and all that has to get audited. Um, and I had no idea what an incurred cost submission was when I was there, or what the DCAA is. Um,
Hmm. There's
but it's
things you
interesting.
learn. There's things you learn.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But I got to talk to people in Iraq and India, Afghanistan, people that worked with the same company, because they're global.
Hmm.
So you learn different cultures as well. Um, so while there, I actually met, I became a lot closer with their CFO at the time. And I'm still in contact with him, and we'll get to that question
Hmm.
with mentors. I kind of consider him a mentor,
Nice.
where I can call him up and say, hey Luke, do you want to meet for breakfast? I want to run some stuff past you. And we have, and I've gone to dinner with him and other controllers and CFOs, in this industry and other industries.
Hmm.
So you kind of build that network
Yeah.
to be able to bounce ideas off of. So when I was at that company, I started working more in their corporate accounting department, the corporate finance department, under the controller and the general accounting manager. So you kind of see that side of it as well. That's accounting is more than just counting dollars or counting numbers. Um, there's a lot that goes into it. There's insurances, there's financial statements, there's the actual cash itself. But
Payroll.
there's payroll,
Payroll.
there's budgets and
Hmm.
forecasting, so there's a wide range of what is under that finance umbrella.
Yes.
Um, so, being with $1 billion company, I come from a very small town, growing up, and I didn't enjoy being just a number.
Hmm.
From what I was used to at more times where the CEO, knew your spouse's name, your children's name, and always
Hmm.
asked how they were doing. Um, so I got a controller position at a survey company in New Jersey. I was there for just over a year. It was a bad experience, but also a good experience
Right.
in terms of building who I am.
Hmm.
Um, and then luckily, um, at that point, I started looking, and the CEO here at Engineering Land Planning reached out to me saying that they needed a controller, because they were growing, they were taking on new segments of work, and they needed to get a handle on their books.
Hmm.
Um, one thing of my favorite is one of the gentlemen on the board of directors he was the CEO of GWTT with their subsidiary in Trench at the time.
Yes.
So I had already known Bob at that
Yeah.
time,
Right.
and he kind of could vouch of who I was and
Everyone knows
what
Bob. Everyone knows
exactly.
Bob. He was kind of like the mayor of GWTT, of course, absolutely. Besides
Yeah,
holding his position, but everyone knows Bob. Yes.
right. Um, so I was the controller here for about 6 years, and recently promoted to CFO. Um, thank
Congratulations.
you.
As my previous coworker, I'm going to tell you this, and I think I never told you this, but I always saw you as a CFO. I
Thank
didn't
you.
know how it was going to happen at that time. I was like, he's so good and he's meticulous. And the one thing that you taught me was to do the job and do it right the first time, which
Mhm,
I've worked with attorneys before as a paralegal, but no one was that meticulous about completing like projects or paperwork or
mhm,
like you are. And I think that really, in a way, you kind of were a mentor that I never said that was a mentor. So that's one of the things that I'm teaching some of my mentees is many times you can learn from people just by looking or
mhm,
just by observing.
exactly.
So you're very meticulous, and I always knew that. And I always wondered, I was like, I feel like he has what it takes to be a CFO. I just don't think it'll be in this company. Um, because every company is set up differently. You know,
Mhm,
if you're in a small place or a medium-sized firm, um, there's not that much leeway for promotions. And sometimes promotion comes from actually working in different companies and acquiring different positions like you have, which you've
Exactly.
done, and working your way, working your way up to the CFO position, which I think is absolutely like you deserve this position more than many individuals that I've met in my career. So
Thank
I'm
you.
really, giving you a congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And I think it couldn't have been done any better. And it was so interesting hearing about you having a bad experience. Um, it, and you know what? I had an experience probably maybe somewhat similar to yours, where I worked in a large conglomerate as well. And I'm like, yes, I'm like here, I'm ecstatic. It's Wall Street, it's New York.
Hmm.
Um, but there was a lot of inner workings that I don't agree with. And there's some leadership that could have been better.
Hmm.
But you know what it taught me, Scott? I was like, what does it take for them to have the job that they have? You know, what does
Exactly.
it take? Um, and how can I make it better?
Hmm.
What do I have to do to have that job? Because I know that I could be not just an asset to the company, but an asset to the colleagues and to coworkers and to create a better work culture and work environment,
Hmm.
And I do understand like the higher you are and the higher position you acquire, it gets harder. There are more pressures,
Right.
but it's how you handle those pressures. And I think it is so absolutely essential
Hmm.
to have the type of career that you've had where, hey, you started as a staff accountant,
Right.
where you kind of know where, and you can check um, other sections in your department and in
Hmm.
your leadership to make sure that things are going correctly as they should. As to when, not everyone has that start. Some people start mid-level, and some people, due to the university or the influence of their university or the influence of their last name or their families or whatnot, sometimes they start higher up. And
Exactly.
and I feel like that's a bit of a disadvantage because if I feel that you have like a bird's eye view
Hmm.
of things and you're not quite aware of all the procedures and all the policies that can be in place when you hold such a responsibility such as CFO or CEO.
Well, exactly. And, working through the ladder and the growth is, you gotta take experiences and little nuggets from each company or each position you have, and you hold it in your toolbox or whatever, and that's what's going to build you for when you're older, and you take on these higher positions. Um, it's I had a bad experience, with the one company I was with. They had three CFOs while I was there. I was a patrol
Wow.
for,
Okay.
and every CFO is different.
Mm,
So it was, during that year span, it was like a pendulum. It was, let's start here, then we go here and here, and it's working 80 hours a week and not sleeping. But even just along like the good experiences, and the bad experiences, you got to learn from it. And it's history or your past doesn't determine who you're going to be,
right.
or it doesn't determine what you can or what you're going to be. But it's really the foundation to what you're building yourself to be and what you can succeed in. So even a bad
Hmm.
manager, it's you learn from that.
Oh
I
yeah.
learned not to manage that way.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. That's what I learned as well. And it's really interesting because sometimes you think you have it bad or you think you've met the worst manager you could have, right?
Mhm.
In a certain company. And then you move on and, either because for whatever reason you move on and you're in another company and you're like, I can handle this. I can handle Wall Street. I can handle these type of managers. I can handle these
Mhm.
type of attorneys. I've had the worst, at a
Right.
but let's put it into perspective. Maybe you had the worst in that small or medium-sized company. You don't
Mhm.
know what's coming. Um,
Right.
but what it taught me was resilience and endurance.
Mhm.
And it did teach me that I could put myself in a position that in the future I could be a manager or hold a leadership position and not do what they do.
Absolutely.
And that's where you make the change, I believe, and a change not only for the company, but also for the world as well. So I think
Mhm.
that's what it teaches you. It's tough, it's not easy. There are nights where you don't sleep. Um, and then you still have to learn how to manage yourself and your emotions because as professionals, and I have a whole bunch of different professionals that come on my show, some are in the military, and the greatest gift and the greatest thing that you could do for yourself is learn how to manage emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
And you're really great at that. I like
Yeah.
learned so much from you. I'm like, wow. And I think that you're, you know, there comes a time in any company where you luckily you have a group of coworkers that you get along with and that you work well together. And sometimes once they leave, because once you left, then I was kind of like I felt like a little bit by myself a little bit. And then I'm like, oh, I don't have so and so. I don't have Scott. I don't have so and so or my other coworker that would tell me to calm down.
Exactly. Yeah, it's
That would
you
tell me
definitely
not to slam the door.
yeah, you can't manage or work under emotions because emotions aren't going to change what's going on
Mhm.
around you. It's just going to make you feel worse.
Yeah,
So
totally.
it's just, you kind of hit it head on, hit the issue head on and, really solve that problem.
Yeah, what's the best way to manage? I mean, for me, it was doing boxing at that moment. I took on boxing. What are your managing or coping mechanisms for emotion?
Um, I tend to, um, even if it's just shut my door for a bit,
Hmm.
some quiet time, focus on the work, but also having someone that you can talk to in the company,
Hmm.
um, that you can talk to, confidentially or, you know, they you use the word, well, you didn't use the word, but they use the word venting.
Yeah,
Some
totally.
people look at it as negative. I look at it as a positive thing.
Hmm.
As long as it doesn't go beyond probably about 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Right.
You do need to get some stuff off your chest, or if you have an issue with a coworker or another manager, it's good to have that confidential source, or that ride or die, kind of person that you can trust, and they know how to take your emotions from up top down and to kind of calm them down a little bit.
Oh, definitely. And then talking about, our careers and talking about your careers, it's also managing up, managing your managers. You
Hmm.
know, it can be very difficult. You can have a micromanager. It's not easy.
Hmm.
And sometimes paying attention to them. Sometimes they're micromanaging, but not for like a malicious reason. Sometimes it's because they're so stressed out or they're so under the pressure
Yeah.
that their micromanaging is the way they handle their emotions,
Hmm.
you know? So let's go a little bit back a little bit and let's talk about your college and your college experience.
Okay. Um, so I went to it was a small college called C.F.O College. It's just north of Albany. Um, I went there. I grew up in a small town called Tuxedo, New York. Um, we had a graduating class of 83 people. Um, so seeing the college, they had classes of, the classroom fits 30 people. So you can get a little bit more one-on-one with the teachers. If you have a question, they're willing to talk to you and answer your questions, and you're comfortable talking to them. I actually went there as an undecided liberal arts um, major, um, because I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Right.
I came out of school, my SATs were lower. I was actually higher on the liberal arts part of the SATs than my math. But it really wasn't until I took a forensic accounting class that I knew I enjoyed, the finance and the accounting and trying to figure out the issues and the detail. Um, and then that kind of ties to I got my certified fraud examiner license when I was in Mortgage. But it's a small town feel,
Hmm.
college. One of my roommates was on the basketball team, as freshmen, and, I roomed with my high school friend. My twin sister went there, with her best friend. Um, but I got to try new experiences. I started playing rugby there. Um, and we had a good team. And our coach was a part of the semi-professional team in Albany. So, we got to play with them a lot too. Um, so we got to try new experiences and meet new people. And I wasn't going to get that in, a small town in Southern New York.
Right.
Um, so I enjoyed it.
What
And
advice, pardon, Scott, what advice would you give to the first year college student since we're talking about college experiences?
okay, so the first year, I wrote my notes down there. You don't need to know what you don't need to know what you want to do for the rest of your life as a freshman in college or a sophomore. Um, Figure out who you are and what you enjoy. Like I said, I went for undecided liberal arts. I came out with, a major in accounting, in business administration. So it's a complete 180 turn. Um, in college, experience things. It's go for the internships,
Hmm.
make the connections, make the networking connections. Even if it's an internship that you don't want to do as your full-time career when you get out of school, you're still learning what the work what the work life's like. Um, what does it mean to have a boss, or being in an office, or pushing paper.
Right.
Maybe you don't want to do that and you don't want to be in that field. And especially as freshmen, you still have time to kind of reverse what you thought you wanted to do and do what you actually want to enjoy.
That's nice. That's actually really good advice. And enjoy and like be in the moment too with your
Mhm,
experience. Because I think a lot of us, I don't know if it's American culture, or if it's, I don't know what it is, but a lot of us are always looking for the end goal, like the end
mhm.
result. And we forget to kind of enjoy life and enjoy where we are at the moment as well. Don't you agree?
Yeah, yeah, and it's what's meant to be will come. I remember I tried for internships when I was there, and I went on interviews for after college. I didn't get anything.
Mm,
It wasn't until I think it was the last week as a senior, um, I had talked with a recruiter, um, and it was for more trench.
mm.
Um, and she was looking for a young accountant um, for that company, and I started. I think the day after I graduated.
That's amazing. That's a really like that's like a success story right there. Just
Mhm,
to be able to get a job right after you graduate. Many people sometimes have to wait a couple months, sometimes it's a couple years, or sometimes they even have to figure out that they have to go back and learn
mhm,
something else in order to get a job. But I love the point that you made, which is like start networking. I wish I had started networking when I was like in college. I never even
mhm,
thought of that. It never even crossed my mind. And for a lot of people that maybe are introvert, actually your network starts in class, starts with
absolutely.
your classmates,
Mhm.
right? Because you never know who they know or if they know of a position that opens up in the company where they're interning or where they're working at.
Yeah, a good example of that in my forensic accounting class. We had to do a project on, some of these larger companies that were found guilty of fraud. So we wrote out the report, we presented in class, and one of the gentlemen that was in my group, um, wrote, he took that report and he was able to publish it in a magazine that he was an editor for. So you just never know,
Yeah,
who you're gonna know or what they're gonna be.
definitely. What's the greatest lesson you've learned in your career?
Um, you can't do it all, and
Mm,
nor should you try to do it all. Um, there's only so much bandwidth each person has,
hmm
whether it's life or work. Um, there was a couple of years where when my kids were young, I was coaching two different sports at the same time. I
hmm
was, running the Cub Scout pack. I was working,
I
crazy
remember.
hours.
Yeah, I
Right.
remember that.
Um, so it takes a toll on your health, to try to do everything. Um, and in the workplace, it's knowing when to let someone go, knowing when you need help, and asking for help, because that's when you'll make mistakes if you try to do everything. You have a
Absolutely.
team for a reason. Use them.
Yeah,
And they want to grow.
yeah, definitely. That's that's very good words of wisdom there. So next questions, because you did talk in the beginning of this podcast about moving on from a company. How do you know when to move on from a company?
You just know. There's no specific, reason when it's just you just know. You just feel it. You're not having fun, you're not enjoying, what you do.
Yeah,
And
definitely. Or you're dragging yourself, you're dragging your feet to
yeah.
get there, or literally you feel like it's sucking the life out of you or your soul.
hmm
How do
You
I
put
know?
in you put in the minimum of what you have to.
That's called quiet quitting.
Right. Absolutely.
I'm not I don't quiet quit though. I don't think I've ever had. I think it's like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's an interesting. That's almost like passive aggressive. Is quiet quitting considered passive aggressive? Kind of probably is,
I think so.
right? Like a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you're showing up, but you're not really showing up. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Question, what do you like most about being a supervisor or slash leader?
Um, Getting to work with my staff every day, and whether it's the good or the bad times. So here at Engineering Lincoln, we created this well-oiled machine in finance. Um, I have two accountants under me, and I know I can give them something and it's going to get done, and they're gonna, they want to help out, and we kind of built that relationship where it's I'm helping them, they're helping me, but it's also getting to know your coworkers as a whole on a more personal level. Um, know about their families, their likes, their dislikes, because sometimes it's if you're stressed out, you need to walk around the office. Um, you say, oh, how was that thing you're doing on the weekend, or how's your child or your kid, how's school going? So it allows, whether it's a coworker or, someone that might be under me, it's just getting to know them on a more personal level. And it makes it working with them more enjoyable. Um, but also like being able to train someone, train the people under me. But the moment they get it, you see in their eyes that something that you're teaching them, and it clicks and they understand it. It's just a positive thing that, as a leader or supervisor, it's good to see that. You
Absolutely.
know,
And Absolutely. And let me tell you, when you have that type of leadership style, it helps with regards to not having a high turnover in a company,
Hmm.
which, some people don't care for it or whatnot, but high turnover, a lot of HR information that is out there states that high turnover is actually very expensive for a company.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, Going on to the next question, what who was the most, and even if you can't state his name or whatnot, but
Hmm.
who was the most demanding boss that you ever had? And what did you learn from them?
It was actually my first boss at Northridge.
Oh, yes, him. Yes.
Very, very demanding,
Hmm.
but that's what built me to be who I am.
Yeah.
And I needed that, and I learned so much from him. So I remember writing a response to change orders. I would write the letter out, and he made me sit in front of him as he read it, and he made that page bleed in red. We always used a red pen,
Hmm.
but that's I learned how to write from that, or I learned how to think of, I don't know if you've heard him say it, the forest from the trees. Um, really building who I am as an employee.
Hmm.
Because I'm someone that, I don't mind making mistakes because I learn from that.
Right.
And more than likely, I'm only going to make the mistake once.
Hmm.
Um, but, sitting in front of him as he's writing the letter or correcting my letter,
Hmm.
I'm learning to see what's going through his mind as he's reading it. And I was able to kind of correct my path
Hmm.
on the next letter, so I didn't make that same mistake. So there are demanding bosses. There's a reason why they're probably demanding. As long as you approach that demanding boss as a learning lesson,
Yeah.
you'll learn from that. You
Yeah.
know, when I was at the survey company, you know, the three different CFOs, um, the one guy I, kind of butted heads with a bit,
Hmm.
but I learned how to not manage from him.
Hmm.
I know not how not to manage the people under me now
Hmm.
because I didn't appreciate how it was being managed there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what's so interesting? It's so interesting that I know exactly who you're talking about.
Hmm.
And he was probably the most demanding person at that moment, not
Hmm.
now and not recently, but at that moment that I had ever encountered. And it was really interesting because I came in as a consultant. So I wasn't even supposed to be in that industry. Like I was like, no, I'm from the entertainment industry. I'm gonna be
Hmm.
back. Like I'm gonna be here for a couple months. That's what I thought. I never thought it would take 7 years and I
Hmm.
would still be there. But my third day there, the CFO of that company came to see me
Hmm.
and he said, Linda, I'd like for you to stay here. You are working for the most demanding
Hmm.
and probably difficult bosses that we have here, you know, but I really feel like if you, stick it out, that you'll be fine here, which was very surprising. A lot of people don't know that side of that CFO, which you know
Hmm.
who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They don't know that side of him. They see like
Hmm.
more like the strict and very like strict and no nonsense type of person.
Yeah.
And they don't
But
they never saw the softer side of him.
right. But he was the best teacher I think any company could have had because he always took the time to teach. And that's how I kind of approach, people under me here is take the extra 20 minutes,
Hmm.
explain the ins and outs, the in between the lines. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Life these days with technology, it's a click of a button and it gives you an answer. But how do you
Yeah.
get that answer? What's the calculation? What's the why are we doing it? It's more than just doing it. It's why do we have to do this entry? Why do we have to
Yeah.
go down this path and figure it out and put the detail into it?
And also about nonverbal communication because many
Hmm.
times, and this is where you have to be use your empathy. That same boss that was so difficult, that had that repertoire and that reputation of being difficult, one thing that I didn't like, he would come over and stand and hover over me while
Hmm.
did a letter or typed a letter. And for me, it just made me feel so uncomfortable. Um, just it's like a personal space type of thing. Like, can I get a little space? But what I did, and I noticed he wasn't doing it maliciously. It wasn't
Right.
like he was being mean about it or trying to make me uncomfortable. I
Hmm.
realized that it was just he didn't know how to do it. He couldn't type a letter as fast as I could, and he wanted to oversee it. And I had
Yeah.
no problem with that. And then it clicked in my head, there's more chairs in the conference room. Let me go get one. So I
Hmm.
went, got one, put one in my cubicle where I sat. And the next time he came over, saw the chair, and sat down. And
Hmm.
all of a sudden, I felt so much more comfortable. He probably felt comfortable too. And I was like, I can, swerve the computer screen and you can see
Hmm.
what I'm doing. That's not a problem. It was more like the personal space and the hovering. I was like, I have to solve this.
Yeah.
And it's the solving. So, Scott, we have like four questions left. What I'm going to do
Hmm.
is I'm going to stop it. I have to end it. I have to do what my professors do now because nobody wants to pay for Zoom. So, until we have it for free, we have it for free. I'll send you another link and we'll finish up.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
That's good.
Okay. So, Scott, this brings me to the next question. What was the worst communication barrier that you've ever had at work? And how do you overcome that?
Really something within. It was more of my confidence,
Hmm.
um, where I was afraid to communicate and to get my point across, or what I was working on. I can easily put together any kind of analysis or the detail, but standing up in front of people and communicating the results, um, I always had trouble with it.
Mm.
So just, what was it, 2 years ago here, we did a leadership training.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, Greystone Leadership.
Hmm.
And it was transformational for me. Because one, I got to know the upper managers at a new level. Um, but we worked on communication, confidence, um, taking, generous listening, the way we automatically think, if someone's talking to you, you automatically react in a certain way because of maybe who that person is. So it's taking a step back, and communication goes both ways.
Hmm.
It's, is that message sent? Is it the same as the message that's received? And most likely it's not.
Hmm.
Um, so going through that training, you really step back and you listen to the person that's talking and not thinking about the 10 other things you have to do. Hearing their point, what they're trying to get across to you, and then absorbing it and then communicating back. Sometimes even repeating. So what I'm hearing is blah, blah,
Right.
blah. So it's, you know, my confidence has really grown, especially here at Engineering Land Planning, because I've been given the opportunities to grow that confidence, whether it's through this training course
Mhm.
or stand up in front of the board of directors and explain and presenting the quarterly results to them and hearing their questions. Sometimes it's you're giving us too much information.
Yeah.
Get to the point. Okay, that's something I learned.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it definitely was more internal on my confidence and it affected my communication skills.
I love that you stated that. Um,
Mhm.
because those are all the things that I do with my mentees, and I hire outside people for them to coach them. So when they're done, they graduate from my undergraduate of Berkeley College, they're ready to go. They're ready for the
Mhm.
world. I even tell them about the difficult coworkers and the sabotagers and then
Mhm.
the what's it called? the downers and all these
Right.
different characters, right? And there is a book that's called Who Stole My Cheese or something like that, that talks
Hmm.
about all these different characters that you have at work and how to best communicate with them and
Right.
relate to them, because you're absolutely right. And it takes
Mhm.
time too. There's not
Yeah,
college or is not going to teach you every single thing either.
absolutely.
Um,
That doesn't teach you the real life experience of the workplace.
Absolutely. How did you let's talk about the problematic, because one of the things that what I like to do about this podcast that makes a difference is that I don't always want to always sugarcoat every career or every
Hmm.
position or every title. And I want to give people more of a real perspective on different types of careers.
Hmm.
Let's talk about problematic superior or bosses. Um, you've talked a little bit about one. You've had them, we've had them. I think everyone has had them. How
Hmm.
could you work with them, or how do you learn how to work with them?
Um, well, like I mentioned before, it taught me how to not to manage. You have a difficult supervisor. But you kind of have to approach that person or dealing with them as a learning lesson.
Mm,
Um, so there was late nights where we had the whiteboard and we're writing numbers down and crossing things off. Um, but it really did help build my experience
hmm
in the finance end because yeah, they might be difficult, but they know what they're talking about. They have a lot more years experience than I do.
right.
So if you approach it not as, oh, this person's difficult, I can't work with this person, I need to get out of here immediately.
Yeah.
The reality is you can't get out of here.
Darn.
Um,
That's always been my I've tried that. It doesn't work.
right.
That was
So
my
it's
that was my approach to the construction industry. And you see how fast I got out of there, 7 years.
exactly. So if you approach it as, learning, take whatever nuggets this person has that they can teach you or train you, um, the good and the bad.
Mhm.
It's going to make you a better overall person and eventually a manager.
Absolutely.
And it goes back to that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Oof. Is that the message that you have for the audience today? So you're at the end of this podcast. Thank you so much for being on the show. But what's your message for the audience today? And that's the question I ask all my invites.
Okay. And then I think we skipped one question, so we'll go back to it because I think it's
Which one?
what does a CFO do
Oh,
besides count a
yes,
lot of money?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I think
So
that's important.
so let's do that one first. Thank you for reminding me. So
Yeah.
what does exactly, because for a lot of accounting majors,
Mhm.
that are in school or just recently graduated, or maybe are in mid-career, for finance majors, what does a CFO do?
So it's kind of all encompassing. And every company's different, every company's size is different, but really even the industries are different. But the idea of a CFO kind of remains the same. So it's managing the cash in, cash out. Make sure you have cash to pay things and and make them payable. It's financial reporting, on a month basis, quarterly basis, annual basis. Strategic planning, creating the budgets for the year, forecasting. And as we saw with COVID, is your forecast can change on a dime,
Ooh, yeah. hmm
and it's how do you manage to that change that happened. Um, I work with the operations team, you know, helping them become more efficient. A lot of it is in the numbers, showing, these buzzwords, utilization, how utilize your people, why aren't they as utilized as they should be? Um, because reality, project managers are focused on the project
hmm
to get the job done, get it done correctly. So they don't have all the time in the world to, look at the detail of the numbers. And that's kind of what I'm here for, is to really look at the details, the numbers, understand the numbers and why the numbers are the way they are, and then how to fix it.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, I also help with, company growth. What's the business plan? How are we going to grow? Where are we going to grow? Different industries. Um, Working with all levels of the company, from board of directors to upper managers to the PMs and the staff. Building those relationships with each of the levels. Policy writing. That's you're in the legal field.
Yeah.
How important policies are.
Hmm.
Um, Working with external CPAs, auditors, banks, corporate insurances, they're important. It's making sure you have the right coverages for contracts that are coming up. I review the contracts for the company. Problem solving is a big one. It's, and I don't know if it's part of the, being detail oriented,
Hmm.
but you have a problem, how do you fix it? Um, Support, like I said, support and operations. I also act as, the title is HR's HR. HR needs that confident source as well to bounce
Right.
ideas
Yes.
off of.
Hmm.
I work with her with payroll and benefits, from the money side. She
Yeah.
has the people side, I have the money side.
Right. Like
Um,
you want to hire someone, but you have
right,
this salary for that person. So you're going to try
yep,
to get the best that you can within that salary
right,
reach. Yeah.
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 So basically, what it comes down to is I support the operations departments, making sure the company is, we're rolling and we're doing good. So it's, if I have to manage a project or manage a client, I'm going to do it. If I have to step in and, we don't have an IT person, so if I have to set up a computer, I'm going to set up a computer. I'm going to fix a toilet if I need to fix a toilet.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Good for you.
but it's, well, it's you got to get out of your comfort zone, and you
Yeah.
know, I always, one of my pet peeves is when someone says that's not my job description.
You are amazing. Let me tell you, we have different perspectives on this, okay? Because I will be like, what? Fix what? Listen, I don't know, but I'll get you somebody. I'll pay for it. It's fine. That's my
Right.
resolve.
See, but I also want to save money on someone. So if it's going to take me 10 minutes, I'm going to do it.
Well, if you know how to do it, me, I'm like, what? A toilet? I don't, what am I supposed to YouTube? Is there a YouTube tutorial for you? I have my limitations. I can do
Right.
things, but I am not a master of all sciences. I'm not an expert in all things. It,
Yeah.
can you imagine? I would be in school till I was 100.
Mm.
What is your message for the audience today?
So I think there's multiple messages.
Yes, I hear them.
Pick the industry that you're most connected with,
Hmm.
because you have to enjoy what you're doing. You need to understand what you're doing. Like I said, I enjoy construction engineering. I understand it. I can I can talk engineering talk. I can
Yeah,
talk construction talk, and it helps out with clients and on the projects and dealing with some of the project managers and staff.
yeah,
Um, don't be afraid to work outside your job description. So a good example of this, because if you do something outside your job description, you're going to learn from it. So when I was at Moore Trench, I got the opportunity to supervise a well point installation job. I had no, I shouldn't be on a site. I'm an accountant.
right.
Um,
I
but
remember those
from
days. I remember you used
yeah,
to have to do that. Yeah.
but planning, the steps of the installation, working with the people that are doing the installation, working with the client,
Hmm.
managing the numbers.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world. So you kind of appreciate the project manager side on what they go through. But you also learn a whole lot more than what you're doing on your day to day. That was 4 weeks, of driving up to Connecticut and um, really learning. I think that's probably one of the better experiences I had in my work life. Um, so then other things for everyone, you know what you don't know. So don't pretend to know.
Yeah.
Also, you don't know what you don't know. So every day is a
Yep.
chance to learn and better yourself. Um,
Absolutely.
those are two little tidbits from the leadership training that we have taken. but they're important. Um, and I think every day you should learn at least one new thing. If you didn't learn one thing, then I don't think it was that successful or that. And it's
Wow.
whether if you learn something about yourself, other people, your job, um, or something that's not your job. That's you should try to learn at least. I think they say two things a day, but you can go for one thing.
You know what? I can't complain. This has been really good podcast. Thank you for being a guest, but it's like I've learned some things too. And
Mhm,
it's crazy because like I don't know if you remember when I first started at Moore Trench, I was a consultant and they had me in 3 or 4 different departments. Like I'd
mhm.
wake up and I have to be like, where am I payroll? Where am I finance? Where am I cost? And it was at times it was confusing. And I was like,
Yeah,
the scariest thing for me was, and it was a very interesting company. It's like, what did you learn? Great. We're gonna put you to do something you didn't even go to school for,
yeah.
and you're gonna have to learn it. Like when I was in payroll, I was like, what? What? Oh, because I'm covering someone. So
Mhm.
someone went on vacation and I'm covering for them. And I'm like, this is so scary. I loved paying people because it wasn't my money, so I
Right.
loved to punch it in those numbers. But then it was like they told me what the responsibility was. Like, Linda, if you enter an additional number, you like overpaid them by accident. I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, see, this is why I went to school for legal.
Exactly. Well, it's that's one of the things about Moore Trench is that they always they wanted you to push your boundaries.
Oh, they pushed
Um,
mines. Yes,
right.
absolutely.
Because I mean, if you're pushing your boundaries out and
Mhm,
out,
mhm,
you're learning more and
mhm,
more. And they were huge on training and learning and mentoring.
mhm.
I remember sitting at lunch with my manager, and they had just started the mentorship program. And I said, I want to be a part of that program. I want a mentor.
Mhm.
And I remember he said, no, you're not getting one. You're not, I don't know if it's qualified, but that's something that has always stuck with me. Um,
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I didn't appreciate that because I always felt like it didn't matter what you majored in
mhm,
or what your degree was. We all contributed. Like a lot of us came in and we had a good attitude and
right.
we all contributed. Like if I didn't help with some legal things and some other items that came across my desk,
Mhm,
the company wouldn't, because I was the heavy paper pusher there. It was so yeah, and like if you didn't come in and do some of the accounting stuff and some of the cost
mhm,
stuff, like I think every major deserves to have a mentor
mhm.
in a
Yeah,
company.
and yeah, it doesn't matter, who's a mentor or mentee is.
Mhm.
So here we have a mentor program.
Nice.
And we've been building it to be, it's not a direct manager for one.
Hmm.
It's not someone in the same, so if you're a civil engineer, it's not a civil engineer person, that's your mentor. Yes, there are some mentors that are in the same line as you, so you can focus on learning the technical end.
Hmm.
But I'm a big believer in cross department mentor. Um, you need that, if you're a civil engineer, whether it's upper manager in environmental or landscape resiliency or water resources or corporate, administration.
Hmm.
It's you're building that relationship to have that confident source where your mentor is focused and dedicated to grow your career. And it's
I
not
love it.
just in civil engineering
Right.
or, accounting.
Hmm.
It's someone that you can go to, the door's open always, you can shut it and you can say, I'm having this issue. How would you approach it? And it's okay, well, how would you do it? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
That's not how I would do it. Based on my experience, this is
Right.
how I would do
And I
it.
love that idea. I love that idea. I
Yeah.
think more places should have something like that.
Yeah, and my mentees, it's I learn from them too. So that's why I like doing the mentoring program is because I'm going to learn from them as well, as much as they're going to learn from me.
Absolutely wonderful. Okay, well, I'm
Mhm.
gonna I'm gonna end the show on there. Um,